with the presence of the Prime Minister, Baroness Howells, Patrick Adams, I would like them, if I could ask, to join us here at the podium as I present the medal of the presidency of the university to you. Mr. Prime Minister, Baroness, Mr. Adams. And certainly Chancellor White, I think, as the keynote speaker, if I could. Since we're making this up as I go along. Chancellor White. Thanks a lot.
I thought I was just coming to sit down.
I know. Okay, come around. I'll just be the monkey in the middle. I think we have a medal, the presidential medal. I need the props now. Yeah. Baroness Howells. You don't mind, right? All right, good. All right, so we need a good photo op. So we'll all move. We're going to move stage left for the photo. Well, I didn't have the microphone there, I'm sorry. It's my distinct honor as chairman of the board of directors and trustees on this day, 40 years after our first class started, to present the presidential medal to Dr. Olds as the first president of St. George's University. And I'm proud that the Prime Minister and Baroness Howells, Chancellor White, and Mr. Adams, all part of the history of this school, and more importantly, this nation, are here next to us for this photograph at this very historic, but not well-planned, moment.
Tim, I guess you couldn't get this to move up either. I am recovering. I am an infectious disease specialist, but I am recovering from one. First, let me particularly thank the wonderful delegation from our country, Grenada, and the very thoughtful words from the minister. Thank you. You know, one of the unusual things of being the first president that may have been missed by the rest of you is, as a result of that change in the organizational structure, St. George University will now have only one chancellor in the history of this institution. And I want to take a special note to thank Chancellor Modica and his lovely wife Lisa for building this great university. Thank you. I'm also particularly pleased that both Pat and Charles Adams are here. They really represent, you know, both. Charles is on the Board of Trustees and Pat was one of the original founders of this university. You know, these are the people for which the initial creation of an institution started. And it's a rare occasion when you can actually welcome them to an event like this in the history of our school. Thank you for coming, Pat and Charles. Now, there are two individuals here that have no connection directly with St. George that I personally wanted to introduce, because they're my personal friends that came down for my investiture. One is Dr. Ken Bridges and his wife, Maria Bridges. Ken Bridges and I were interns and residents together at the Massachusetts General Hospital a very long time ago. And we have remained friends over the years. And he's going to be giving a wonderful talk, by the way, on Wednesday. Ken is a world's authority in sickle cell disease. And when we were house officers again together, I depended heavily on him for help. I remember. Thank you for coming, Ken. The other individual is another very old friend of mine, Dr. Lee Biblow. Lee is another graduate of Case Western Reserve, and he was an intern when I was chief resident. And then, he stuck with me for over a lot of years. Lee worked with me for 10 years at Metro Health at Case Western Reserve, and then came to the Medical College of Wisconsin for my time there and stayed on, and just recently retired as the chief medical officer. And I can tell you, Lee is actually the best doctor I ever met in my professional career. Thank you, Lee. And of course, I would like to give a very special thanks to my friend and colleague, Chancellor White, and his wife, Dr. Karen White. You obviously appreciate from Dr. White's speech what a wonderful leader he is. What you may not know is that his wife, Dr. Karen White, was our faculty member at the University of California, Riverside, and continues today, even as the wife of the chancellor of that competitive system, still teaches at the University of California, Riverside. Thank you both for making the trip down here. It means a lot to me personally. And of course, to echo the comments of Tim, you know, those of us that stand at this point in our career need to recognize that there's no way that I would be here today or been successful in my professional career without the love and support of my wonderful wife, Jackie, for 38 years, and my family, represented by my youngest son, Trevor. Thank you all for being here with me. Now, it is customary in an invocation like this for the incoming president to talk about all the new directions that he plans to take the university. And that really isn't appropriate in this case, because I don't plan to take the university in new directions. Instead, I think it's important to comment on several of the aspects of the university that we plan to double down on as we move forward into the future. The first, and has already been commented on, is our mutual commitment to the country of Grenada. The Grenadian country and our university have grown together over the years, and as we move forward, that partnership is essential for both the success of this island nation and our university, and I plan to double down on that support. Not only will we obviously continue to instruct ever larger numbers of Grenadians, but we plan to be partners in the development of the healthcare system in our country, and that we want to be part of the ever improvement of K through 12 and undergraduate education in our partnership with TAMCC as well. This is an important thing for us to do together, and we're making that commitment as we move to the future. The other hallmark of our university that we plan to double down on is the commitment to student success. The single distinguishing feature of our school, distinguishing us from virtually every university that I have worked on in my professional career, is the deep commitment on the part of the staff and the faculty of this institution to the success of each and every student. That is what has made us great, and that was what we will make us even greater in the future as we increase the number of programs, success strategies that we help our students to ultimately obtain their success in all of our endeavors educationally. And I think that will be the hallmark of our future as well. And finally, one of the things that I was most impressed with when I took this job was that not only is 1% of all the U.S. physicians alumni of this university, but 75% of the graduates of this university go into primary care fields, which are the very fields that our country needs. The average St. George graduate is twice as likely to practice in an underserved area and will see twice as many Medicaid patients as the average U.S. graduate. I would say St. George, absolutely. I would say St. George University is already doing more for the United States than most U.S. medical schools, and we ought to be proud of that and double down on that effort in the future. Now, you would also expect the new president to have a few new ideas, and so I'll comment on 3 directions that I believe the university will be going, which are the same general directions we've been moving on, but we will need to do different things in the future to be as successful as we've been in the past. The first is to be more geographic in our educational platform. Historically, most of the 3rd and 4th year of medical school was taught in New York and New Jersey, where today about 65% of our clinical platform is. But we are recruiting students from all over the United States and from 140 countries. And we need to develop an ever-enlarging clinical platform that reflects the students that we are recruiting. And we need more places in California and Florida, in Illinois, and in other countries where we are increasingly recruiting more students. The second thing is that it is no longer sufficient for us to work on the narrow part of the pipeline. We have the pre-med programs, and we have post-bac programs, and we have wonderful transition programs for both the medical and veterinary schools and our College of Arts and Sciences, but that's not going to be enough. We have to build stronger programs on the front end of our university through partnership with universities around the world, such as the Cal State system, where we can offer students a 6.5-year program from freshman in college to the MD degree or veterinary degree. This not only decreases the cost of education, but accelerates the training of needed professionals for our world stage. We also need work on the other end. It is no longer adequate for us to just train doctors and hope that they get residency training programs after our graduation. We need to be actively involved in the expansion and growth of graduate medical education as well. In the United States, that is actually where the choke is on the manpower flow. We must be active in developing new residency programs in the locations that have the greatest needs and in the specialties which are in shortest supply. And that needs to be part of our future. And finally, the international aspect of our school. We are already the most international of all, if you will, the Caribbean schools. We're 70% Americans and 30% from 140 different countries. But we need to be more international. The dynamics that made us successful in the United States for the past 40 years exist in many other countries of the world. They need doctors as well. And we need to find a way to train physicians from those countries and find effective ways to return them to those countries so that we can provide the same manpower support for all the countries of the world that we do currently for the United States. By 2025, half of the students in this institution need to be non-Americans, and that's part of my commitment for the future. Now, let me close with some personal statements. I'm glad I didn't go immediately after that wonderful song. You don't know the half of it. I didn't ask for that song. Somebody obviously talked to my family. That was a song that was sung at my father's funeral. And so that was, I was having a hard time holding it together. I was looking over at my son Trevor, and I had a sneaky suspicion that it came from him. That was my father's favorite song. And as Chancellor White has already mentioned, my father was one of my greatest influences on my life. He was a president of 3 different universities in the United States. And it's true, I learned many lessons from my father. And so I'm going to close with some personal comments about those that assume leadership positions, not only in higher education, but in life. We can't always anticipate what the future will hold, what difficulties will arise, what situations will demand of us. So it's important that we remember that in positions of responsibility, we have to make many tough decisions. And when tough decisions arise, it falls on us to think carefully about what the impact of those decisions are on the long-term future of our institution. Now, some of you will visit my office and you will see a small 3x5 black and white photograph on my desk. It is a photograph of the commencement party from the 1964 Springfield College commencement. You will, of course, all recognize Dr. Martin Luther King. Most of you will not recognize my father, Dr. Glenn Olds. The story was even tougher than the FBI. He almost lost his job when the Board of Trustees basically were unhappy with that selection. And a donor ripped up a check for $1 million for giving this dangerous radical an honorary degree, at the time the largest private donation ever offered to Springfield College. But ultimately, they had to do the right thing. And of course, in retrospect today, it always seems so simple, but we're often faced to make decisions for which no one will really know all the details. The details of that story that Dr. White told were not actually even known till 45 years later, when the FBI files were finally declassified and the details were actually revealed. So we're often faced with making tough decisions. So I will end with a commitment to you, which is a quote from Dr. King himself, appropriate since this is his birthday today, that it's always the right time to do the right thing. Thank you and God bless.